Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to my room. In this video I will be talking about just some music that I enjoy. It's true that I don't often talk about music in this channel, and I think maybe that's a little bit of a shame, because music is definitely something that I enjoy a lot and that is quite important to me. Depending on the period, depending on the moment of the day, or depending on like what kind of period I'm going through, or what kind of season it is, or what kind of climate it is, what the weather is like, what kind of mood I'm in. The kind of music that I listen to tends to vary, but definitely music plays a big part in my life, and maybe I can make a video that's not necessarily about music in relation to the INFJ, or music in relation to the cultivation of NI, because music for cultivating NI, actually I released a video on that, at least one, which you can check out. But at the end of the day, music is something that I enjoy, primarily not for a utilitarian reason. I enjoy music because music's great. I could say it entertains my SE, it feeds my SE. I could say it helps me cultivate my NI. Sometimes it does that. But I think my intention in this particular video is to not use the lens of personality theory, and just literally talk about some music that I like, to give you a peek into my personal universe, my everyday, these things. So, where to start? I would say that, I'm a man who tends to have few endeavors in life. I know it sounds potentially sad, but it's not sad, because it just so happens that, there are certain types of people who have a lot of different interests, and they tend to gravitate towards certain ones, certain moments, and other ones at other moments, and they're like little butterflies flying from one to the next. Now, of course, sometimes these interests can lead to expertise, no matter how numerous they are. There are some very talented people, like my girlfriend, who has a lot of different interests, and she's really, really good at many of them. Then you have people also who seem to be dramatically devoid of interests, so let's not talk about these people. And then there are some people, maybe more like me, who are not particularly versatile in the number of interests and the diversity of interests that they display. I would say that if I had to give a list of the various things that interest me, and it's always a question that people ask me when they interview me, and do not believe that I do not assume that I'm doing interviews like every day, five interviews a day or anything. I've done 3 YouTube interviews, and each time, I'm asked the question, what is your interest? What are your interests? It's revealing that I said, what is your interest? Because if that question was asked in the singular, it would make my job so much easier, because I just say, well, philosophy. Whereas if I'm asked the question in the plural, then I'd have to say other things. But there are other things, including what I'm going to be talking about today. So the other things would be, I think, besides philosophy, I think, an interest that I have is just linked to philosophy, is really like humans and how they function. Not from a physical / scientific perspective, more from an existential perspective. How they relate to being in the world, understanding things, relating to their own understanding, making sense of their feelings. So that's definitely something that I'm big into, and I explore these topics through the lens of philosophy. Then they have other things, other passions, I think, yes, other passions that I dedicate time to. So there is literature, and there is music, and there is film as well. You know, I made a few videos on film. I made a video on INFJ filmmakers. I made a video on specific questions of type for Lynch and what was the other one? It was Lynch and Malik, I think. I think it was, yeah. And then there's music. Then there's music. Music is a true passion of mine. I don't think I could live. I could live without music, and maybe not many people could live without music. But I really could not live without music. Music is very important, and so it would be interesting maybe to just delve into music I like. You know, music I'm into. So the first thing that I would say here is that I'm actually I've become remarkably open with age. You know, we often hear that in politics one begins by embracing left-wing principles, and in getting older one tends to become more conservative. I think maybe in music or in art, a lot of the time the process seems to be the inverse process, at least it has been for me. I've remained somewhat left of center, clearly left of center, politically speaking, but I would say that I've become slightly closer to the center over time. Now musically, you know, when you're a teen, first you discover music, and then you're a teen, and if you care about music, you're gonna have certain bands and, you know, certain musical acts that you care greatly about, and I think it's not uncommon at that age to be kind of a little bit exclusive about the music one likes. Sometimes one will be a little bit elitist. Someone will take what their favorite bands very seriously. Will have musical heroes, and will be super excited about going to see live bands play live gigs, and these things. So I guess I've been through those various phases, and now I would say in this dawning decade and new decade, I've really reached a stage where I don't have necessarily a predefined genre of music that I go to because that's the only thing I like, or say like 3-4 genres of music that I go to, and even I would say that in fact it's even worse than that in a way. I enjoy, the more I get older, like the more I'm experienced listening to music. I listen to music. I don't really play music. The more I also enjoy, pretty naively, I would say, candidly, I enjoy pop music, you know, big singles. If I enjoy the song, you know, I sort of rid myself of this notion of guilty pleasures. You know, I enjoy that stuff. And I think I'd be able to explain more or less why I enjoy it, you know, and it's not an enjoyment related to a guilty pleasure. You know, there's very popular stuff that I quite like, and probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have had that openness, which I consider to be a good thing. You know, I don't think that I have diluted or watered down the refinements, if any. You know, again, I'm not a musician, of my tastes. I don't think I've watered them down. I'm quite happy about this expansion of my horizons, because it really means that every day I can just go online and check out some websites, maybe 4 or 5 different music websites if I'm in the mood for music, and have lots of new music to listen to. You know, that's why I consider music a passion, like listening to music a passion. I think the reason why is because I'm excited about discovering new music. You know, if my interest in music was mostly about listening to music and having favorite musicians or bands, I would say music is one of my hobbies, but maybe not one of my passions. But actually, I'm really excited about albums that I know are going to come out in 6 months or 8 months or a few months or in the next year. And, you know, I tend to keep abreast of musical developments like pretty much every day, for usually over lunch or something, you know, for a few minutes a day or for 15 to half an hour. Like I do spend time just discovering new music, reading stuff, watching videos about music, music reviews, and it's just something that I do, and I don't often talk about it. It's true, which is weird because, you know, music is something that is cool to talk about. I think it's partly because most of the friends I have who are big into music are in Ireland, yes, which is where I kind of got to refine my taste a little bit, as I will presently relate. But anyway, I'm soon going to go into Ireland, which I'm really excited about. I'm going in a week's time, so I'll be able to talk about music then, which is sweet. You know, I love talking about music, but French people are not okay. Like, this maybe is a broad generalization, but I don't think that French people, on average, have very good taste in music. I think that people who are in the Anglo-Saxon world tend to have better tastes on average. At least, you know, from my experience in Ireland, especially, like the average person, you know, there's a higher percentage of people who I would say have a good idea of what music is good and what music is really not good, and can tell you why. I just think French people, a lot of the time, I don't know, like they just consume the music, popular music especially. There's like the whole like chanson française, you know, the French songwriting, singer-songwriter music, which has its good stuff, but the majority of it is really bad. And the lyrics, trust me, they might be in French, but doesn't mean they're deep or anything. Often they're really, really simplistic. And I know so many French people who love that stuff because they don't really take music that seriously. It's not a passion for them. It's just something that they like to have while it's on, you know. And I understand that too. I don't want to judge that, but I guess I'm enough of an elitist that I kind of do judge a little bit. But I tried, you know, I play that down. I used to be way worse. So I think, you know, when I was younger, when I was still in school, what did I listen to? I remember that I was somewhat indifferent to music until I was like age 12 or 13. So it's not that young to start getting into music. I mean, I think, well, this goes way back, doesn't it? Back to a time when I was like really small and I look very different than now, I hope. So I was still in like primary school, and I remember being into boys bands. I don't know if you guys, you know, those who are kind of in their early 30s as well, or late 20s, remember there was like this era in the 90s where the boys bands were popular, like Words Apart, and there were lots of French ones, and Boyzone is still like famous in Ireland because they're Irish, and there are still some boys bands nowadays. I think it went through a period of really not being trendy, but you have One Direction and these things. Although maybe that's kind of past now. Maybe that's already gone. But anyway, so I was into these things, but I wouldn't say that was my initiation into music. You know, it's just everyone in my school like was listening to these like shitty little boys bands that, you know, were not writing any of their songs, and you know, so let's maybe leave that aside. No, I think that the first music that I really got into and started to listen quite seriously to was actually hip-hop music, and that was around age, I would say 12, 13 to age 16 or 15. I think, let's say 12 to 15. I was listening mostly to hip-hop music. Now, at the time, I was listening mostly to French hip-hop, because, you know, in hip-hop, if you want to enjoy a really good hip-hop song, good rap song, you kind of need to understand the lyrics, and I didn't really get any of the lyrics like in English. Say if I wanted to listen to like Wu-Tang Clan or NWA, or, you know, so I was listening to some really good French rap music. One is called The Funky Family, another one is called I Am. I Am is actually quite a well-known rap group. They've collaborated with the Wu-Tang Clan, members of the Wu-Tang Clan, particularly Method Man, yes, and they've collaborated with Redman as well. So, and you know, it's kind of the same universe, the a French version, influence, but with really localized like French idiosyncrasies. There's a lot of really good stuff. Talking about it is making me feel like listening to I Am later. So I Am was were my heroes, along with the Funky Family and a band called NTM. NTM is really, really good bands, like a hip-hop duo from Paris. The two first are from Marseille. Marseille and Paris are the two big cities for rap music in France. And so I was into a lot of that, and I kind of built my identity, my initial identity around that, which is kind of funny. I don't know if this is a common INFJ thing, but there was definitely like a rebellious instinct, a need for meaning, a need for self-expression. I was fancying myself as the one who was like rapping those lyrics and stuff. So the songs were good. Like a lot of the stuff that I liked then is still good today. Not all, but a lot of it is great. But at the time, I was clearly also identifying with a certain need for rebellious self-expression of individuality, you know. So I say, yeah, until age 14, 15, I was big into that. I think I remember before my transition into more guitar-based music, my last big crush was Eminem. I was a massive fan of Eminem. I was obsessed with Eminem. Especially his first, I don't think it's his first two records, because he had his first record, Infinite, that was kind of a flop, and then came the Slim Shady LP and the Marshall Mathers LP. So I think that would have been like 1999 and 2000 or 2001, and that I was really big into. And it so happened that my mum, my brother also liked Eminem a lot, and my mum, who usually hated the rap music I was listening to, was big into Eminem. And that's the thing, because Eminem, we didn't really understand his lyrics. We liked his charisma, we liked his antics, we liked the music, we liked the flow. But my mum, who hated rap music because she was like, oh, those lyrics, they're really insulting, they use swear words and everything, like the French ones. If she had known what Eminem was saying in like the real Slim Shady and stuff, she probably wouldn't have liked it as much. That's the beauty of not understanding lyrics. Sometimes it's a big hindrance, and other times it can be seen as an advantage. So we were all big into Eminem. I actually got my fucking hair, sorry I just swore, but I got my hair dyed like really bright blonde to look like him when I was 14. You know, maybe there are friends, good friends from here that are gonna watch this video and remember, oh yeah, Ryan, that's when he was trying to look like Eminem, and it really didn't suit me. But you know, I just had to go through that period. It was just like what I needed to do at the time. So yeah, so that was my Eminem period. Eventually, just gravitated towards other stuff. Around the age of 15, 16, you know, I was listening also on the side to like a lot of Japanese soundtrack music based on the Final Fantasy games and a lot of other games. Like at the time that Nobuo Uematsu, I don't know if he still composes, but he was composing a lot of different OSTs for games, and I got to know other composers of OSTs, and I was listening to a lot of that. But it was never something maybe that I talked to people about. Eventually, I can't exactly remember what happened. Around age 16, I fell in love with the band Muse. So I was a big fan of Showbiz and Origin of Symmetry. It's a British band. I think now, by now, they're pretty well known in America. At the time, they were not big in America. They were really big in England, well, in the UK, and in France. Muse has always been really big in France. So I was excited because I was able to convert my French friends to Muse's music. And I think what I needed at the time, it was still like this kind of, I guess, like, you know, they gave me the view of something epic, and I really embraced it. And there's some sort of grandiosity, you know, not necessarily in a bad way, but you know, it's all very big sounding, and I just enjoyed that, and my friends did too. And to this day, Muse is the band I've seen the most. You know, I've seen them, I think 3 or 4 times live. So yeah. I think 4 times, which is the last time I saw them. I was already kind of my passion for them was waning. You know, I'm still a fan of their first few records. I think they're really, really good records. But then, like, when they started, I understand why they wanted to vary their sound and move towards, you know, more electronic stuff, like including more electronics in their music and stuff like that. I understand the shift. You don't want to make the same music forever, and they're amazing musicians, but I respect that. I don't enjoy their music as much these days. But Origin of Symmetry, still classic early 2000s alternative rock album. Like, it's really great. It's a Newborn, Citizen Erased. These songs, like, they will always be very, very special to me. And my mum was, again, one of the converts that followed in the wake of my passion for Muse. So that was kind of a band that I embraced for a long time, and I lazily sort of stuck to them around that time for a long time. But then they became the sort of softer side of a broader engagement that I started having with more extreme guitar music. Some of it is not so great actually nowadays, but you know, I was into the whole wave of, like, at that age I must have been 17, 18, so you know, like a typical Irish friends at that time already had the musical maturity to know that, like, a lot of the rap metal stuff was not good, you know. But I just didn't have the maturity, and I was like, yeah, this is so cool, you know. So my brother was big into Limp Bizkit, and I was like, yeah, I like it, not so much, it's not my favorites. And I was big into, so not really a lot of rap music, but you know, I was into new metal for sure. So Slipknot, Korn, I was a massive fan of Korn and Slipknot. All my teenage angst was channeled into that. And I enjoyed some other bands. Not all of them. I never liked Disturbed and these bands. I always thought they were kind of fake, but I was big into Korn and Slipknot, and I was a big fan of the two first Linkin Park albums as well. So you know, and that was just a period during which I was not as involved in music as I had been in the past. I was just listening to that, and I kept returning to the same songs, and I was just feeling that angst, you know, feeling that need for release from angst or something. And I, you know, at the time I was getting closer. I was getting to age 18 or something. I started going to university, and it really corresponded with the time when my interests also gravitated towards literature, like I said earlier, and film. And so I didn't have as much time to invest solely into music. So I became a bit lazy. And then when I moved to Ireland at age 19, and then I became friends with a lot of Irish people, and I made a lot of Irish friends around age 20 onwards, until age 26, particularly a friend of mine who's an INFP and who has amazing, I think, taste in music. His name is Ivan, and I will see him next week actually. I'm really excited. I haven't seen him in a year and a half. He's one of my very best friends, and that guy just made me rediscover the whole musical landscape. He made me realize that I was you know, I had been ignoring amazing movements in you know, in music called punk music, post-punk music, new wave music, like really good sort of experimental rock and experimental pop from the 1960s. Some jazz music, some really, really great jazz music from the 60s, 70s, sometimes before, but more like 60s and 70s stuff, even some kind of experimental Miles Davis stuff. And you know, in jazz, I went through a phase, like in those 6 years in Ireland, I really developed my musical maturity. So I listened to a lot of Miles Davis in jazz music. I listened to a lot of what else did I really like? Well, I mean, I listened to a lot of the classics, Charles Mingus, John Coltrane, and stuff. But I was gravitating mostly towards Miles Davis. But I never developed like an expert knowledge in jazz. But I did kind of feel like I just waited for too long before I discovered that genre. It just happens that my family was never big into jazz, so I didn't get to explore that. So that was that part. And then, so next to jazz, I listened to, like I said, a lot of older stuff that I just wasn't familiar with enough, you know. So I listened to a lot of David Bowie and stuff like that. Like a lot of David Bowie. I listened to a lot of trying to think of 60s, 70s Roxy music. I was big into Roxy music. The music of Brian Eno, who was later to become the pioneer of ambient music, which I described in my video on how to cultivate NI. To, you know, I mean, I listed him among the people whom I listen to when I write, for instance, Brian Eno. So he composed a lot of great ambient record, like music for airports, music for film, and up until now, like he's probably in his 60s now, his music is really good. So I listened to a lot of that. Roxy Music was big for me as well. I listened to, from like earlier, I listened to like Jefferson Airplane, you know, these bands, psychedelic music as well, from that time. But I would say that quickly, around the time, my big passion turned out to be the music of the 80s. Most of my favorite bands are 80s bands, you know, and I fully accept it. I think now I have the maturity to just be able to say, okay, like maybe that's my aesthetic, maybe that's my stuff. But late 70s, I would say from 77 until 91 is more or less like, so that's what's 14 years between 1977 and 1991. Most of my favorite music was released. So that includes a lot of the punk music that came out. I mean, I was never like the biggest fan of the Sex Pistols, but I was big into other punk bands like Wire. If no one has ever listened to Wire, they're punk pioneers, post-punk pioneers as well. They released their first post-punk album in like '78, which is really early for post-punk. So I was big into them. I was big into the Clash as well. You know, I was big into those bands. But I think that maybe I got even more into post-punk. So the likes of Joy Division, of course. Magazine is another great post-punk band. After, you know, I got sort of sated with listening to all the Joy Division stuff, I started listening to New Order. I started listening to New Wave, Blondie. I enjoy to this day a lot of Blondie. I enjoy a lot of goth rock, The Cure. The Cure is like one of the bands I've listened to the most. I listen to a lot of, so that's not so much post-punk. Maybe you would call it, what would you call it? Jungle pop, I guess. Like the Smiths, I listened to the Smiths. I went through a big phase of being into the Smiths, of being into the Stone Roses, like the whole Manchester movements. I listened to Britpop, so that would have sort of encroached upon the 90s up to the mid 90s, because I do like Blur and Pulp and Britpop bands as well, Suede as well. But I would say that, you know, the period until 91 includes the My Bloody Valentine's Loveless, which to me is like the landmark record of my life. It's the record that has the most meaning for me, because it completely blew my mind when I listened to it. So My Bloody Valentine's Loveless. I was big into shoegaze for a while as well with Slowdive, so maybe I could push that date until a little after 91, maybe 94, you know, because Slowdive released good music until 94 or something like that. Well, they released an album last year, but so shoegaze, I was a big fan of Slowdive, MBV. I was listening to Riot as well. A little earlier than that, still in the 80s, next to new wave, post-punk, punk music. I was listening. I got into synth pop, and I got into some more noise pop as well, like the Jesus and Mary Chain. To this day, the Jesus and Mary Chain are one of my favorite bands. Psycho Candy from 1985 is one of my favorite albums. That was really, really special for me, the idea of releasing pop music, but then with a distorted sound or with a lot of reverb or a lot of noise. So either in the noise pop sense or in the shoegaze sense, that was always this clash between beauty and kind of ugliness. Like, it's always been something I gravitated towards. I listened to a lot of no wave and noise rock as well from that era, like the band Swans, who's still a lot. Well, I still love that band, and they've been releasing some of their best albums since the 2000s. Or the 2010s rather. Swans is amazing. I recommended them for Cultivating Ani, especially their relatively recent album To Be Kind from 2014. I listened to a lot of Sonic Youth, some noise rock, or just, you know, indie rock. I still have a lot of appreciation for indie rock from the 2000s, right? So the likes of what kind of indie rock can I recommend? Well, you know, there's Wolf Parades. I don't know if you guys have heard of Wolf Parades. Apologies to the Queen Mary is a great indie rock album, and there's a lot of other bands like Brooklyn Social Scene and other ones. Then in more recent years, I don't know, my taste has become more eclectic. So I still listen to all that I mentioned, but I've gravitated towards also what's been done more recently. So, You know, I listen to some hip hop music that's a bit cutting edge. I like Kendrick Lamar. I like what is on the Top Dog Entertainment label. I think that's really, really interesting what they do. I actually like Kanye West. A lot of people give me some flack for it, but I enjoy Kanye West, and I think he's, of course, he's a bit crazy and sometimes he's a bit silly, but he continues to reinvent himself all the time, so I always check that out. I like, you know, the Arcade Fire stuff, not the last album, but I like them a lot in the 2000s. I like Vampire Weekends. I'm really excited for the album that's going to come out this year. I like Grimes, I like Poppy, I like the band Shushu, who does post-punk up to this day. They're releasing some of their best stuff at the moment. So I like just a bit of everything. If I see rap music that I'm excited about, I can listen to electronic music, because I haven't mentioned electronic music, but I like a lot of electronic music as well. I like some minimal techno music, especially in the 2000s, like Panther the Prince. I like him a lot. I like some more house stuff, deep house, like the music of Nicholas Jar, for example. I really enjoy. So yeah, like really in more recent years, I would say that it would be impossible for me to give a particular categorization. I think that if I want to go see a gig, I still want to see a real life performance, so I'll be more gravitating towards rock stuff. You know, I like you know, the music of Courtney Barnett, indie rock music of Courtney Barnett. She's really good. She's currently active. There's a lot of really talented indie rock musicians up to this day. So, you know, Car Seat Headrest is a really good indie rock musician as well, and there's lots of other ones. And post-punk is still a thriving genre. The band Savages is really, really good. All female, releasing great music and an amazing live band. So there will still be plenty to talk about. Now it's been 32 minutes, so I'm going to stop here. But this is to give you an idea of my musical evolution and the kind of stuff I like. I feel like I would need to make another video to complete the picture. Alright, see you soon guys. Take care.